Hey, thanks for stopping by and welcome to Will Cook Music Reviews. I'm Will Cook, and today I am sharing my thoughts on the latest album from Bring Me the Horizon, Post-Human Survival Horror. Sounds lovely. Now, according to the band, this was meant to be the first EP in a series of 4 set to be released over the next year, all under the Post-Human title, but we can see with these 9 songs that they make up more of a full-length album than an EP. It's something that keyboardist Jordan Fish addressed in an interview recently with Wall of Sound. He says, "It's an album if you take away the shit songs like on a normal album, and that is just too spot on." I remember back in the day seeing a 10-song album and feeling shorted, like at least give me 11 songs, but in 2020, this is how I want my music. A nice tight package, 30 minutes of the best material from your recording sessions, no filler, no wasting my time, and I am happy to see that. Survival horror is definitely not wasting any time. I'll give you a quick rundown of my history with Bring Me the Horizon. They were one of the bands that introduced me to the metalcore genre, along with Asking Alexandria, Alisana, and The Devil Wears Prada. I was introduced to them by a friend after their 2008 sophomore Suicide season, and my innocent ears could barely get behind it. I just found it to be so brutal, some of the heaviest stuff I'd ever heard. But it didn't take too long before I became immersed in the music, and I found there was a lot more to it than just constant chugs. There was tons of feeling to be found throughout the album. The closing title track is one of the most intensely tragic songs that I've ever heard. The hoarse vocals of Ollie Sykes balanced between screamed and clean, and it was the first time I ever found myself singing along to something that wasn't strictly from a clean vocalist. And then the big titled 2010 album, There Is a Hell, Believe Me, I've Seen It, There Is a Heaven, Let's Keep It a Secret, was absolutely vicious. Ollie still tearing apart his throat with these massive anthems that took on a bit of a larger scale and had this kind of grandiose feeling to them, with some of my all-time favorites from Bring Me the Horizon with Crucify Me, It Never Ends, Visions, and Blessed with a Curse. And then they really brought on these synths with the addition of keyboardist Jordan Fish with 2013's Sempiternal, a much more electronic-infused sound with a bit of a softer edge to Ollie's vocals, and a much more accessible sound with songs like Can You Feel My Heart, Sleepwalking, and Shadow Moses. I was not too stoked on the album as a whole. Those 3 songs are the only 3 I've kept close over the years, while the rest I found was a far cry from some of the stuff off their past 2 albums. But they figured it out with 2015's That's the Spirit. They embraced the pop and electronic elements, and we really got to hear Ollie as a clean vocalist, and I was fine with that. They took on an arena rock sound, and they lost some of that brutal excitement of their early stuff, but they still packed in tons of weight with songs like Avalanche, Blasphemy, and of course the massive hits Throne and Drown. And then 2019's Ammo, we got an album that showed that there was pretty much no boundaries for Bring Me the Horizon. Electronic and synth pop stylings were at the front of the sound that still showed that heavy side, but in a much different manner. And honestly, I found it to be a bit much to take in, too much going on with not enough real substance for me. Nearly 2 years later, it's the 3 M's that have stuck with me in Mantra, Medicine, and Mother's Tongue. And that leads us to Survival Horror, shaving off 20 minutes of runtime compared to Ammo, with a much more tight and focused group of songs. For the past 3 albums, 7 years now, we've been seeing BMTH rise in popularity as they've played with more electronic and pop elements, and I guess I got to the point where I wasn't really expecting I'd ever hear anything this heavy from them again. We got our first taste about a year ago with Ludens, released as part of the Death Stranding Timefall soundtrack. It builds on a bit of an atmospheric synth bed, but it works its way to that fantastically heavy-handed chorus that manages to rip into me more than anything off of Ammo. Now, I didn't really spend too much time with it last year when it was initially released. It wasn't until the album came out here that I really started to have some fun with it, and while it packs a huge punch, it's that repeated chorus outro line, a new Luden, that really rips the heart out of my chest. And then we got Parasite Eve in June, and it worked as a pretty fitting soundtrack to the uncertainty and tension that has pretty much defined 2020. It's a good dose of new metal, balancing the soft, ominous verses with a massive chorus. The name comes from an old PlayStation survival horror game that I'm sure is better than it looks, and it takes contributions from Mick Gordon, the game's soundtrack artist for the Doom series, among others. Now, we saw BMTH bring on some featured artists on Ammo, and they bring on several more for this album. I don't know how many BMTH fans are into Youngblood, but I was really into his 2018 debut album, so I was pretty stoked to see him featured on Obey. It's got a pretty solid pop structure with that anthemic chorus, but there's a real bite to the pre-chorus. You get to hear Youngblood rip out some pretty cool screams, and that breakdown at the 2:30 mark, holy shit, I did not know Ollie still had it in him. But he definitely does, as is shown in Kingslayer. Those bursts of guttural screams in the verses are just nasty, and I'm all here for it. And then the pulverizing pre-chorus that shows off the vicious side to his vocals that I feel like I haven't heard for years. And of course the addition of Japan's baby metal for that soaring and pounding hook that is pretty stunning. So much juicy nu metal goodness to this song, one of the best I've heard from BMTH in a while. I'll include the Linkin Park referenced Itch for the Cure electronic interlude with this one, as it pretty much teases what's to come with Kingslayer, and it just makes for such a sick transition into the song. One by One holds some of the most Linkin Park influence of the album. It brings me back to the Meteora days with that synth breakdown of a hook, one of the album's catchiest melodies. And thank you BMTH for introducing me to Nova Twins. They've got vocalist Amy Love featured in the second verse with this gritty rock delivery that's hard to ignore. The closing track, One Day the Only Butterflies Left Will Be in Your Chest As You March Towards Your Death, features another Amy, this one a bit more well known as the lead singer of Evanescence. Amy Lee on a BMTH song I never thought I'd see the day, and I enjoy me some Amy Lee, and it's cool to hear her singing with Ollie on this one, but I would have enjoyed it if they had her featured on something with a little bit more excitement to it. It's a very somber and slow ballad to wrap up the album, and I'm sure it holds its share of weight for many listeners, but for myself, I just don't find myself swooning over the emotion of it all. On the other side of the album, opener Dear Diary is an absolute thrasher. It pounds through with the quickest runtime outside of the interlude, and it just does a great job of setting up what to expect on the album with commentary on the current state of things. I love the massive breakdown at the end when Ollie says, "It's not the end of the world. Oh wait," then boom, it's the type of song that just kind of pokes fun at how fucked the world can be. And we'll wrap this up with Teardrops. I know I mentioned that One by One holds the most Linkin Park influence, but I may have to correct myself because this one absolutely screams Linkin Park in its opening breakdown. I love to see these guys doing that sound proud with this one. It was the last single released before the album's release, and it holds this kind of universal appeal feeling to it in a way, just because it follows that accessible nu metal sound that Linkin Park saw so much success with. It has this lasting classic sound to it that's almost instantly familiar, but at the same time, it includes touches of Ollie's personality, like in the hook with the everything is so fucked part that just feels like a BMTH move. It's getting to that time of year where I'm going to really start to begin to piece together my top 100 songs of the year list, and while I am so happy to hear this type of stuff from Bring Me the Horizon, not one of these songs is really screaming at me to get in on the list. As much as I can headbang and sing along to these songs, I find them to be more fun than absolutely essential. Now, I'm not quite sure when we'll be getting the next installment in the Post-Human series, and from what I've seen, we shouldn't expect a repeat of the sounds on this one, so I'm excited to see what BMTH cooks up next. Thanks for stopping by. I would love a thumbs up if you enjoyed the review. Hit the subscribe, I've got more reviews on the way, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to chat. I'll see you next time.